Welcome to episode 34 of the Trash Talk Business Podcast. I'm Andy Weins from the great state of Wisconsin, right here outside of the city of Milwaukee today. I am joined by someone I look up to. He doesn't even know that yet. Well, let's make it awkward. John Sacco. I'll break it down Barney style. Everyone that watches podcasts know that it's normally like, hey, you want to be on the podcast? Cool. I press the buttons, you get on, we talk about you. However, I saw John, I didn't know who he was, like a month ago at the Scrap Expo in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm like, that guy's pretty cool. Oh, he has a podcast? He's pretty well spoken. I'm going to find him on LinkedIn. Turns out the guy has won awards left and right. He's got a docuseries. I'm like, I didn't know I had a hero in the scrap world, and now I do. Also, so a lot of podcasts out there that are like, hey, let's do like 10, 15-minute warm-up. Not this. I'm like, hey, John, how do you say your name? I want to make sure I get the words right. Let's go. So here's the other thing. The week after I was with a Scrap Expo, I was in New Orleans at the eScrap, the Electronic Scrap Expo, and I'm sitting there outside of the hall going through Recycling International magazine, and it's top 100 scrap recyclers, right? Well-known recyclers. And I'm like, oh, there's John. It wasn't like a little episode. It was like a half page. It was like an ad he took out on his face. And then I'm like, all right. I casually was like, hey, you want me on the podcast? And now I'm like, I got to get this guy on the podcast. So, award-winning, scrap hauling, recycling man of the day. Pile of Scrap is his podcast. John, that's literally the longest 90-second intro I've ever given somebody.
Well,
so here we are.
Thanks for having me, Andy. Little known fact. Now, you're outside of Milwaukee, so you have got to be a Green Bay Packer fan, I'm thinking.
Go, Pack, go. Here's the deal. The last 2 weeks of the podcast.
Green Bay Packer fan.
Okay, all right.
I grew up. I wore number 15 in high school because of
Bar Star, let's go.
Everybody goes, well, how does a kid from California become a Green Bay Packer fan? It's pretty simple. My dad was an immigrant from Italy, and he didn't follow sports, but he knew a guy named Vince Lombardi.
So hold on. Taylor, now I need Taylor to come in here. Taylor, get it. Taylor's our producer. I'm not like bougie like Joe Rogan, but I do have a guy who's smarter than me. So put it over my shoulder here. So actually here, Taylor, go a wide shot here. For a lot of people that watch our podcast, listen to it. The majority of our listeners, just pick up the whole camera. But anyways, behind me, so I like behind your wall, you have, right, who you are, what you do. Behind me here, I have the wall of greatness, only the greats, right? So you got Brett Favre, you got Jordan. Who else I got back here? There's Hulk Hogan over there, Marilyn Monroe. But there you go. What it takes to be number one, Vince Lombardi, right? I was very fortunate. My father grew up about 25 minutes from Green Bay, and when they were in the Super Bowl, he's like, why is this a big deal? I thought they're just like a local football team. That's how much he didn't know growing up on a farm. He was like 10 years old. He could care less when they were in the Super Bowl. So imagine that, growing up in the 60s, 20 minutes from Green Bay and not even caring. So there you go. So huge Packer fan. Casey and I normally talk about football. He's a Cowboys fan. I'm a Packers fan. We talked a lot of smack on the podcast early in the season, and then we got quiet for some reason. No big deal. At least I did. Yeah. So, Packers not so hot. I do have my
not doing so well.
My coffee mug. There we go. All right. So you're a Packer fan. I'm a Packer fan. You love recycling. I love recycling. All stars are aligning here. All right. So I met you at the Scrap Expo. Talk to me about how you got into scrap in the first place, because it's near and dear to me also.
Well, okay. It's pretty simple. I'm second generation.
Okay.
It all happened because of my father. We were also in agri-packaging, and when I graduated from USC in 1984, I actually worked on the agri-packaging side, even though we had a metal recycling facility. And that was the focus at the time. But in 1986, in 1985, my father came to me, and he had found a machine that was manufactured in Italy and wanted me to market the machines in America. And that's where Sierra International Machinery was born, where we imported, and we still do to this day, shears, portable balers for metal recycling for the ferrous side. And then we have our manufacturing in Georgia for the 2-ram balers and conveyors for baling paper, plastic, copper, aluminum, and even MSW at this point.
Really?
So,
Okay, so you're on the equipment side of the house.
both sides.
Okay.
We own and operate our own metal recycling facility here in Bakersfield, California. That's our headquarters, and
Awesome.
we do what yes, we sell equipment, but we process recyclables every single day.
So, I kind of knew that, and that's what I love. So I do consulting in our space, but I also own a company, right? And actually, right before we get on the podcast, I said, hey, our audience is primarily junk removal, and you got twitchy in the best way possible, because and this is an argument I've had for 15 years in my head and out loud. According to the SBA, right, the junk removal subsegment of the waste industry this year, 2020, 2021, it's about a $10 billion industry, right? The challenge I have is this, is why you got twitchy. I hate the word junk. It has a negative connotation. Going back to the turn of the century, the term junkie, a lot of people don't know this, the term junkie comes from people that were addicted to heroin and opioids that used to take their little trinkets and things in to a scrapyard, right? And then get money, and then they use that to get their fix, right? The term junkie itself comes from our industry. Like you said, you're a second generation. I've known a lot of people that are in the scrap industry are multi-generations. My great-grandfather owned a scrapyard on the northwest side of Milwaukee, 2 yards he had from the mid-30s until his death in 59. And then there's about a 50-year gap, and then I got into the industry in 2009. But it's in my blood, and it's what I know. And so I had a critical moment in my life. I came off a deployment in 2015, and there was an old timer. His name was Ruby here in Milwaukee. I used to take scrap it by him. I used to climb his hill on Saturday mornings. That's what spending time with Dad was about. We didn't go fishing or a baseball game. We went to the scrapyard, and we would dig through looking for brass and copper and other things that people threw into the sheet iron pile. And that's how we, right, aluminum ladders, you name it. That's our Saturday mornings. And so I had a moment there where I was looking to buy a scrapyard because his son didn't want to take it over, or get into the hauling side of the house. And scrapyards are cost prohibitive if you don't have any. I had no money, right? But I had a truck and a trailer and a good attitude, so I went into the hauling business.
Okay, good for
you.
So
your pedigree was equipment, and then did you buy a yard? Did you build a yard?
No, we had the yard. We've had a metal recycling facility since 1959.
Okay, so you had the yard first, then you got into the equipment.
When I grew up, for some reason, my dad would always put me over in the agri-packaging side, and my older brother would work over in the metal recycling side.
So agri-packaging, explain what is
agri-packaging. We used to make potato bags, onion bags, cotton bagging, and ties. Because in the San Joaquin Valley here in California, we grew at one point at 2.2 million bales of cotton out of the San Joaquin Valley.
Okay, so you had two very different businesses there that your father had.
Right.
Gotcha. All right, and then you got into the scrap side of the house, and then eventually equipment, or you were always in the equipment side?
No, the equipment side came in 1984, 85 is basically. 84 technically is the start date, but when I started getting involved was in 85.
Okay. So then that evolved into, where are you at today? What does the day-to-day of your life look like today?
Okay, so Sierra has two distinctly different companies. One is Sierra International Machinery, LLC. That is the company where we sell and distribute manufactured recycling equipment for processing ferrous iron. Those would be shears or portable balers for logging appliances and or baling bushling to go to a steel mill. We manufacture 2-ram balers for paper, for garbage. Well, actually, garbage, that's another subset. But basically for copper, aluminum, and for paper and plastics. And then we do conveyors as well. So we have a manufacturing facility in Jessup, Georgia. We're expanding. We're on our third expansion right now since we opened up in 2008. And we'll be 96,000 square foot under hook come here in about a month and a half.
Awesome. All right. So that's you. So you're selling your equipment to scrap yards, to
metal recycling. You won't catch me using the word scrap. Just so we know. So you're wondering,
really?
Why does any word use the word scrap? Because scrap is the new word junk.
Yeah,
it's a negative connotation. And And so we sell equipment to metal recycling facilities.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's who buys, just like ourselves. We are primarily a metal recycling facility. We do oil field service work. We actually do a little demolition, not with explosives, but where we tear down buildings and stuff like that. And we process paper as well.
Do you guys do C&D on the construction side of the house then?
We do not. We do mostly oil field service work where we'll go down and we'll take out pumping units, tanks, big tanks, 55,000 barrel tanks. We'll take stuff like that down, remove concrete pads where the pumping units will sit, and remove the residual metal for the recycled iron.
Okay. So let's talk about that, right? I'm in the process of writing a book that has nothing to do with this podcast, but it's called Words Fucking Matter, because the language we use matters, right? And so we won't use two words, right? And keep me honest here, right? I won't use the word junk and I won't use the word scrap for the rest of this podcast to the best of my, because to your point, there's a negative connotation. And one of my opportunities with this podcast is to bring a level of professionalism and awareness to the recycling industry.
All right. So let's put a couple things why scrap and junk really don't work.
Yeah.
All right. You probably have had some family member get a knee replacement, a hip replacement. Somebody close to you has had one of those sometime in your life, right?
Yeah. Yeah, my uncle was at both his knees.
Okay. 50% of the metal in the replacements have recycled content in it, at a minimum. So when grandpa tells his grandkid, and he had just come off the surgery of his knee, they're going to say, Grandpa, what did they put in your knee? They put junk in your knee? No. Did they put scrap in your knee? No. They put a new knee in made from recycled metals.
Yeah, versus old.
Words do matter because, see, we are not junk. Okay, I got another analogy for you. If somebody laid out on a table a gold coin, a platinum coin, and a silver coin, would anybody say they're junk?
No.
Why?
Precious metal. Because they have perceived value.
What makes it precious?
Because it's worth something. It can be turned into something. It has not only value as a coin, but also as value as the silver and gold itself is more valuable probably than the denomination of the coin that it represents if it's an older coin.
If I brought into you on that same desk and you had your gold coin, silver coin, and platinum coin, and I threw an old beat up water heater refrigerator on your desk, would you call that junk? Most likely people will say yes.
I would absolutely. Yeah.
But it's not. Why?
Yeah.
Value. First of all, there's value to it. Two, it is every bit like gold. It's going to be made into something. It's precious. That refrigerator or that old washing machine or water heater, that's going to be the new steel that makes the bridges, the new steel that makes our highways, the new steel that makes football stadiums. I mean, Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas, the steel supplied to there was supplied from SSAB Steel Mill in Muscatine, Iowa, which uses 100% recycled iron to make new steel. And I could go, let's build a hospital, Andy, without recycled metals. Let's go.
I watched you just put a video on LinkedIn about that, or I just saw that video when I was researching you, and you're like, hey, let's build a hospital without recycled materials, and you don't have a hospital.
You can't do it.
Yeah.
You can't do it because, first you need a foundation. Foundation has rebar in it. Rebar is made from 100% recycled iron. 100%.
Yep.
Okay? Now we got to have I-beams and to start building the structure, right? Well, the I-beams I'm using in my planned expansion in Jessup, Georgia, are made by Nucor, 100% recycled iron. Okay? So now you can make those I-beams out of iron ore. But 70% of all new steel in America is made from recycled iron. Okay? So let's pull that out. Now we got an operating table of stainless steel and all the tools of nickel and all that. Where does that come from? Recycled metals.
Yep.
How about bed frames made out of steel? Recycled metal. How about all the electronics that run a hospital, all the copper wiring, 33% minimum recycled copper content in it. And all the aluminum. Aluminum is also like iron. It's like 70% of all new aluminum products are made from recycled aluminum.
So from your perspective, why is it when I go to the landfill, I still see people putting washers and dryers and sinks and faucets into the pile, right on top of the hill?
They're putting it in a pile that is segregated from everything else.
No. If I drive up to the landfill, I see it coming right out the back of trash trucks. I see it coming out the back of other trucks, right? And this is right from my perspective, it's a mindset issue. I can see those stainless steel things coming right out, right into the top of the landfill. Trash master comes by, crushes them. Another truck dumps on top of them, and we'll never see that.
See, here in California, there's a law: you cannot bury metal.
And that's the challenge. The California, without getting political, right, has a lot of things that are different. I used to have a business down in Lemon Grove in San Diego County, and California they are extremely progressive when it comes to recycling, and other states aren't.
It's crazy, Andy, that anybody would bury metal. When metal, first of all, how long is it going to take to decompose? All right, let's talk. But how about the fact that all that metal, every bit of metal, is 100% recyclable and continuously recyclable. Unlike paper, that after 7 times, like a cardboard box, after recycling it 7 times, the fibers are no longer big enough. But that's 7 times. Metal is infinitely recyclable.
Yeah. So have you seen?
That's a local people who, I don't know, they get the head up their ass. You said be frank about it. Why would anybody bury metal when it's this is my problem. No. If somebody came in and started throwing shit in a pile and it was all gold, everybody, oh no, why would you throw gold away?
I gotcha. This is the challenge in the industry I'm in. Within the waste industry, there are people day in and day out. They're like, oh, it's not worth my time to pull this washer out of my load. I'm just going to throw the whole thing in the landfill and pull off, or the transfer station.
Recycling facilities in every town.
Correct. Across almost every landfill and transfer station, there's a scrapyard across the street. Right? Metal recycling. There we go. Ding one. I owe you a drink.
Andy,
metal recycling facility.
It doesn't take long. In all honesty, once you realize that you start, when you say a metals recycling facility, that sounds like, wow, scrapyard. What's scrap? People think, actually the word scrap was tested. And Michael Smezlansky at Israel did a test on the word scrap. People think scrap's what comes off your table at the end of dinner.
Yeah, table scraps. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's fair.
So that's why I've learned, and it's taken time. Once in a while, I'll slip up, and I'll use the word scrap. But it's interesting. At a steel mill, their pile of recycled iron, they call that scrap. Now they should be allowed to call it scrap because that's a steel mill.
Yeah.
But when we in the industry every day call it that, the policymakers, the regulators, and the activists think that's a problem. No,
and here's what's interesting. I did a talk 3 weeks ago at the junk removal conference in Raleigh, North Carolina, and people were talking about metal, and I'm like, let's talk about scrap, right? I almost positive the topic of it was warehouse and scrapping operations, right? That was but to your point, right? Metal recycling, that vernacular is different. It brings a level of professionalism to what we're doing. It's also being a little bit more thorough, right? We are doing metal recycling, right? With paper recycling, plastic recycling, right? We are doing metal recycling versus, to your point, scrap. Scrap is way too open of a term for others to interpret, and it devalues what we're actually doing. We are recycling metal day in and day out. That's how I make my money.
The most recycled product by weight in the United States is iron.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
Iron's number one. Over 72 million tons last year. Now, when you say that to anybody on the street, they don't have any way to put in perspective 72 million tons, right?
Yep.
But then when you tell them the automobile they're driving, the car they're driving, is made from recycled metal, they're going to go, really? Because think about it. When you think of 70% of all new steel is made from recycled iron, most of the steel in the auto industry, okay, most of the copper and most of the aluminum, all aluminum transmissions, wheels, motor blocks, made from 100% recycled aluminum. not virgin, not aluminum bauxite. No, made from recycled metal. So it's important for people to start understanding that their day-to-day lives, everything they touch made of metal, there's a 70% chance anything made from iron came from recycled iron. And aluminum, same thing. Copper, minimum 33%. So, and then paper. Think about this about paper, Andy. This is a good one. Every single paper product outside of home toilet paper and home paper towels is made from recycled paper. You go to a gas station and you get you want to dry your hands if you want. Recycled paper. Every newspaper that still remains in the U.S., that paper is made from recycled paper. Cardboard box. Most of it's made from recycled. Sometimes they'll blend some virgin fiber, which is fine. But most of the content is coming from recycled paper. Toilet paper in any restaurant, any, outside of your home is recycled paper.
So how do we get to the place the Europeans are where culturally they recycle more than we do, right? Because in America, people are like, oh, I want to recycle. I don't want to put plastic in the ocean. And then they buy a one-time use plastic bottle and throw it in the closest available trash can.
Cultural issues are a big part of the world today.
Mm-hmm.
Some countries don't have the infrastructure, like in Malaysia. They don't have a real infrastructure for the collection of waste.
Yep.
Okay. Now, in America, I just think it's pure laziness. Okay. All right. How does a plastic bottle, how does this get into the ocean? I don't see any legs here. I don't see any arms. How does this get into a waterway? How?
Choices. People
put this shit in our environment. Yes. Do we make too many things from plastic, single-use plastic? Yeah. Okay. I'll give you that.
Yeah.
But is that the excuse?
That's it. I mean, in Germany,
is crime a cultural problem, or is crime what? Crime just doesn't happen. Plastic just doesn't get into the environment, and I think we love to blame the people who make plastic products because if they don't make it, it doesn't get into the environment. There's truth to that, but the truth is, what pollutes? Does plastic pollute, or do people pollute with plastic?
Correct. And also they make plastic products because we buy them. If we stop buying them, they'll stop making them, right? They will adapt. Right. So yes, that's a very simple point.
Now, I use this Yeti stainless, I guess it's made out of stainless, but it's a fantastic, I use a filter. We have a filtered water machine. So I don't use, Gatorade, it gets 110 degrees here in Bakersfield. And when I walk a lot, I need to get a little electrolytes in me. But the point here is plastic is a problem because people in America are a problem, and some countries just don't have the infrastructure to properly dispose of. Yes, is it the best use of our landfill space, throwing something in there that won't decompose for eons? No.
Yeah.
But if we throw it in the proper place, it doesn't strangle the turtle.
No, absolutely. So, how you're out there beating the drum? We're going to talk about the docuseries here in a little bit, right? Sure. You're on the leading edge of this. What do we need to do different, right? Is it individual responsibility? Do we need to create programs like Germany have, where they get deposits back for every bottle? Then it'll create.
In California, we have a bottle bill that does just what Germany does, and a lot of states across America do. There's a couple things, in my opinion, that can, first of all, okay, you see, this is a double-edged sword about plastic and the elimination of plastic.
Mm-hmm.
And let's eliminate plastic from any and all packaging needs.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go to, let's change Gatorade bottles here and make it in a nice 100% recyclable aluminum container. Okay? you're going to get less Gatorade on a truck.
Yeah, it's going to weigh too much. It's going to be cost prohibitive because aluminum's
cost prohibitive, isn't it? What are you going to do? That means how many more trucks are you going to have to use? So how much more CO2 emissions?
Yeah.
To transfer. See, that's where the double-edged sword. I mean, there are a lot of packaging. Look, and if you follow me, you'll see that I blast Amazon. They send a package to you with a piece of clothing in that envelope that's half paper and half plastic. 100% unrecyclable. Nobody can recycle it profitably.
Mm-hmm.
And hey, Amazon, wake the hell up. Give me, my friend Wes Carter over at Atlantic Packaging has a great envelope made from 100% recycled paper. It can do the same thing, stuff it in, and it arrives. Everybody's happy because you can put that in the recycle bin. Boom, back at the paper mill, we got a new paper product coming out. But when you start making products that are absolutely 100% unrecyclable, because if you think about all those little single-use plastic, go to McDonald's and they give you your fork, your knife, and your napkin in a little single-use plastic, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Now, why not put it in paper?
No, why not?
So who has the moral responsibility to change their packaging needs? So I finally, after 4 years of Super Bowl ads that we do at Sierra on our Super Bowl commercials on our social media, finally, after 4 years on the recycling pizza box, Domino's Pizza is the only pizza delivery company that puts on their box, do your slice and recycle the pizza box. Now, for 4 years, I've been hammering this. We've had over 1 million views in the last 4 years of our recycled pizza box thing. And yet there's still communities who will not take the pizza box and the recycle stream. And it's Pratt Industries and West Rock, who are the number 1 and 2 pizza box makers from cardboard, have put out it's 100% recyclable, and yet you have communities who won't take it. So
I've heard that before, that the pizza boxes are recycled because of the cheese and the grease.
That's bullshit. Look, when you put it out, not take your plastic out, take your food content out, that box with a little bit of grease is 100% recyclable. And Pratt Industries and West Rock have so stated it. So it's like the plastic. How do we change? People need to change how they package their products.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
And if you package your products in a real quote-unquote product that can be recycled profitably. Now, mind you, our industry, we at Sierra, we're a for-profit recycler. Okay? Yep. And you can't expect to recycle for free because you have to process it. And the value of commodities dictate the cost. The cost, for instance, at MRFs across America, the cost since the pandemic, because of the contamination in the blue bin, has risen the cost of separation upwards to some places over $300 a ton. Okay? Not much of that material that you pull out of a MRF, the paper, the plastic, is worth anywhere close to $300 a ton.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Paper's not worth $300 a ton. Cardboard, the best cardboard, that market's horrible right now. So you got all these products you're separating. It's costing you $300 a ton, and not one product other than aluminum cans is worth
making money.
$300 a ton. Now what do you do? Who's going to pay that bill?
So So what is it? Because I get this. I've had this argument, question, concern with other people. What are the things that people are putting in their blue bin, right? That are like, so pizza box, right? Let's go beat the drum. That's even me, like I recall being told you can't recycle pizza boxes. Okay, so now what else in those blue bins are people putting in that shouldn't be put in there? Because if we just pass the problems on to the MRFs, then they're gonna stop taking stuff, and then we're gonna destroy our own infrastructure.
Diapers.
Who really, diapers are getting put in the recycling bin.
Contamination rate in Los Angeles, the city of Los Angeles during the pandemic, rose from 38% to over 50% of stuff in the blue bin that are contaminants. And here's why. There's a social economic issue here, and it's understandable certain things because everybody gets a blue bin for free. But if you want an extra garbage bin, you got to pay for it.
Yeah.
So we're staying at home. We're not going to the office. We're not going to daycare. We're working from home. For that matter, we're not working because the government chose to shut down Jessica's dress shop, but let Walmart and Target stay open to sell dresses, but Jessica's dress shop. So Mom Jessica owns a dress shop, had to stay at home, didn't have any income coming in. Now, are you going to go pay money for an extra trash bin, or are you just going to throw it in the blue bin? Where are you going to put it, my friend? The blue bin.
In the blue bin.
And so the pandemic really highlighted huge challenges to the recycling of household waste. But I want to talk about household waste for a second. 4% of everything really recycled comes from households. 4% in America. We don't focus on the 96% that's just kicking ass. We always focus on the damn blue bin. I hate the blue bin. Not that it isn't a good thing, but when you start looking at the greatness of our industry and what it's doing to our everyday products, just look in the office, look at every electronic component we're talking on right now, everything made of iron, from your car to the rebar in your foundation to everything made of copper, aluminum, stainless steel, iron. And without the recycling industry, without the materials recycling industry, none of that happens. But we focus on the 4% of the houses. Squeaky wheel gets the grease because it's political expediency. Oh, so they make rules and regulations based on the 4% that hurts the other 96%? See, that's the craziness of what we have to suffer. Because I'll tell you, people, if you went, I do this every time because, we'll get to it. You want to talk about my docuseries, but I will tell you, when I tell people I'm in the recycling industry, the first thing they tell, oh, yeah, I do my bottles, I do my cans. Is it true a Yoplait yogurt plastic is or isn't recyclable? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. I tell them, that's not my area. I'm in the materials recycling, the recycled materials industry. They go, well, what's the materials recycling industry? I go, well, we handle a lot of iron, paper, copper. Oh, really? Well, what do I use every day that's made from recycled materials? I go, let's start with your car. And so the point is look, the truth is that it's a big topic, and it's not to be sneezed at or, undervalued to the fact that plastics is a problem. Household recycling, it is an issue. We want to do more. It's not cheap to do it. And really, how do you do it? I don't have that answer, because that's the 4% of what I don't do. I don't have the answer. Can we do better? Of course we can. Can manufacturers make products from aluminum instead of plastic? They can, but remember the offset I said there. Can we make better packaging where Amazon sends a completely 100% recyclable piece of envelope with a shirt that you buy from Adidas? If you put Adidas in there and they send it from Amazon and it shows up, and that nice envelope made of recycled paper goes into the recycle. There are things we can do.
Yep.
That's what I do this for, Andy. I'm an advocate for the recycling industry. How can we do it? But I'm just a one-man crusader.
But you're not, because you got people like me that will follow you, right, and beat the same drum and echo the voice and be out there, because in our industry, often, right, in our industry, the right, I'll call it junk removal industry, because that's what we're listed at, right? I see these websites that of national organizations and individuals say, hey, we recycle, right? The ad is up to 40%, and I know what comes out of houses. We have about an 80% recovery rate in our facility, right? And we're on the front edge. We're on the collecting end, right? We go into people's houses. We go into office buildings, we go into industrial properties, and we clean things out. And every time I walk by a 30 or 40 yard dumpster, right, especially construction debris ones, my girlfriend gets pissed. She lives in the Chicago suburbs, little bougie area. I can't help myself. We walk by a construction job site, remodel or new construction. I got to see what's in the 30 yarder, the 40 yarder. Sure. I can't help myself. I don't care if I'm wearing nice shoes. I gotta look over the rail. And I'd say 3/4 of the time or better, I look at it and I see Romex. I see, piping. I see old cast iron, shit stacks. And I'm like, just let me go get my Jeep real quick. Right? Because people do it's easy as lady. And then
it has value.
Correct, but they're throwing in exactly, but they're throwing in a 40-yard that's just go right up to the landfill hill and be dumped out. And I want to go dumpster diving to extract that stuff.
See, you see the value.
Absolutely.
So if those were gold bars,
everyone, the neighborhood would be jumping in the dumpster. They get their swimming trunks and everything.
Look, let's be honest. There are a whole set of people in major cities across America who make their living dumpster diving for recyclable materials that have value. And the first thing they're going to pick out is anything made of metal.
Oh, no, and that's how I used to make my living. Back in, I always tell the story. 2 days before Christmas, 2008, I got laid off from my father's company. For Christmas that year, I got a chop saw. And it was a $200 chop saw. My dad never bought new tools. And that's what I got for Christmas that year. And I started driving up and down the alleys in the northwest side of Milwaukee, dumpster diving in every dumpster I could find. And the first half of 2008, the first half of 2009, because I didn't have a job. And I learned how to separate and sort and scrap at a level way beyond my dad. When I was like 5 or 6, I first started taking apart like lock sets and faucets, things like that. My dad was a remodeler. And so I right in our driveway there, he taught me how to take apart lock sets, right? The old ones, they had little brass fittings in them.
Absolutely.
And then we also used to drive around. I remember it was Tuesday and Wednesday nights. We would drive around the nice neighborhoods up and down, picking up curbside trash. I got so many GI Joes, and then but my dad would also pull faucets, and he'd pull copper, and he'd pull wire from people just throwing away old extension cords, or they did a remodeling job and threw away their faucet. And I did that. My father made money doing it. Like I said, my great grandfather had a scrap yard. 2009, when I got laid off, I started doing it, and then eventually people started paying me to pull stuff out of the house. But I never gave up on the value. I remember there was this one job in particular. I've done thousands of jobs in people's houses, but there was this one job. My guys, our crew got a kick out of me. This is like a $6,000-$7,000 job, cleaning this house, a full house, and I'm like, hey, there's 2 boxes in the crawl space I really want. And the guy had brand new Romex in one, and he had like this milled aluminum that he was tinkering with in the other. And I was so excited to get that, right? We're talking $50 in scrap on a $6,000 job. And I was more excited about that $50 in scrap than I was about whatever else there was in the house, all the donatables or collectibles or whatever else. And like, I grew up with it. And I've seen value in it. And my crusade, along with you, is to tell people in our industry, it's not just about how much I can charge somebody, what are my landfill fees, and how fast can I flip jobs. It's how do I maximize the value of every load I put on my truck? When and where do I build into my logistics to offload metal, right, at my warehouse, at my storage unit, at my garage, I don't care, or stop at the yard, the recycling facility, call it myself, the recycling facility on the way to the landfill. That's my crusade. That's why one of the reasons I do this podcast. I'm a veteran, and we get a lot of jobs because I'm a veteran, but I don't want to be known as the veteran junk removal guy. I want to be known as the guy that's in this industry that's out there beating the drum, teaching others how to recycle more so they see value in it also.
There you go.
So you're not alone.
Is that an airborne hat you're wearing?
No, Camel Crew.
That looked like an eagle from
Similar. So actually, our logo is this. What's interesting there is the eagle from the 101st actually came out of a National Guard unit and Wisconsin Militia Guard unit. They had an eagle named Abe in 1864 in the Civil War, and that's how the 101st got their eagle. You can fact check me on that. Right. And our mascot is the eagle, and his name is Sergeant Freeman, which was the name of my squad leader in Iraq. So total side note. Do you have a military background at all?
Say again?
Do you have a military background?
No, I'm 60 years old. I missed all the conflicts, if you will. My dad served in World War II, the Army Air Corps from 42 to 46.
Oh, no shit. Okay, good stuff.
Yeah.
So he came.
I got, I've been to all the D-Day beaches. I've been to Bastogne and the whole Battle of the Bulge. I've done that whole tour. My brother Philip has been to Iwo Jima, Tinian, Saipan. So, no, I've never been in the military, but thank you for your service first and foremost, because I'm the son of a World War II vet, the quote unquote, the greatest generation. And I have a huge amount of respect for, just for anybody who serves in the military. It doesn't matter what they did, if they were in. I did a podcast a year and a half ago about this gallery here in town for all the people of Kern County that have lost their lives since 9/11 serving the military. And I dealt with the 82nd Airborne, who was a customer in the oil fields, but he participates in the gallery, and we sponsor a soldier who's lost his life. And we sponsor, what you do is you give money to the gallery, and crazy stuff, man. I could barely hold that together doing that podcast.
Yeah, no, it's I tell people it was a job, right? And ultimately it was, because that's why you do it. Now it obviously transcends that. I hauled fuel in Iraq, which was not the smartest job at the time, but I wanted to get as close to the front lines as I could, and I couldn't be at combat arms. But it set me up for the success I've seen now in my life, in that even as I'm writing this book, I wrote about this, like, in the civilian world, like we talk about, it's like when shit happens, you're like, but did you die? Right. And like, that's a really good way to start in a perspective. It's like, well, you're not dead. So what are you? What do you have? What can you do? I talk about in my life's mission is to breathe life into the people, the places, and the products I interact with. Right. It's not about, like, I work for waste management. Almost everybody in this industry at some point works for now WM. They dropped waste management. Now they're just WM, kind of like UPS changed from United Parcel Service 20 years ago to UPS. But, UPS, there's this, they want to maximize the value of everything they pick up, and rightly so. God bless them, right? Because they're a for-profit company with stockholders. But my goal is to breathe life into things, not just maximize the value, but maximize the people around me so they also see the value. Because I got 20,000 square feet here. I can process about 16 cubic yard trailers a day. That's what my building can handle. I can do more than that, but not sustainably. Right? There's only so much material I can process here, and there's only so far I can go here in Milwaukee. But the opportunity here is, what if there was someone like me in every city that gave a shit? Right? What if there was someone like you that gave a shit in every state? Right?
Well,
now we're moving mountains.
There's a lot, and also, here in Bakersfield, California, there are a lot of people who, hang on a second. The sun is coming in. The sun is coming in on me, so I'm going to.
I saw a reflection in your picture. Do you have a train track right outside your window there?
No, what I have outside my windows are rail scale.
Oh, the rail scale. Okay,
not rail scale, but our scale for the inbound traffic here at our facility.
Got it. Anyways, I saw some. I couldn't tell if they were trucks or
tractors. See end dumps coming in that are loaded. With
that's what it was.
Iron going out and all sorts of things coming in and out on a daily basis, hourly, minute basis.
I think it was your podcast, maybe it was someone else, whatever, when we were at the Scrap Expo, and you were talking about, this is what I also find interesting is, all these businesses that are so decentralized, and it's people working from home or sitting in office buildings downtown. It's like, you got to be in there to open your gate in the morning and close it at night. Right. I tell people, like, I gotta walk the warehouse and smell it every day, because I can tell you what kind of jobs we've been doing based on the smell, right? Sure, it's the honest truth. I
know. Listen, there's certain smells you can't unsmell, and if you've ever been in a real dirty MRF,
God,
and in the dead of summer where it's 100 degrees and 100%.
One of my favorite smells, and this is a disgusting smell, but I love it because it reminds me of my childhood. The smell of stale beer being crushed in the aluminum cube machine, right? That it's because we're in Wisconsin, right? We're in Milwaukee, we're the drinking capital of the world. I don't care what anybody else says, and there's 10 beer cans for every one soda can, and it's like this yeasty smell with a hint of sweetness, right? Because there's a little bit of soda mixed in there.
And there's always bees flying around. Or
my God, there's the bees. Yeah. And it's that smell along with the grease and the grime and the diesel and the gravel. And it's like this mixture of like, that's what Saturday mornings smell like, boys. Like that puts a little hair on your chest.
I know that. We don't handle cans anymore. But anyway.
Yeah, that was the, I don't know why because there was one scrap here that was like cans only. And we would go there every once in a while. But yeah, that's, whatever. That's a unique smell. We'll just leave it at that.
Yes, sir.
The smells of the recycling, the metal recycling yards of our day. So we have not too far from me, probably about 5 minutes from my house. I live in Mequon. 5 minutes from my house is a top 25 MRF in the country. It's the Germantown WM facility, and I used to work only about 10 minutes from there for WM. So I had a firsthand knowledge watching how WM does it, and before that, I ran a medical waste treatment facility for waste at the time. And if you want to know what a nasty smells out there, go work in a medical waste treatment facility for a couple of days. You couldn't. I had a Jeep with the top off, and you could smell me driving down the road. That was bad.
That's part. The recycling industry is very vast into what it's doing.
Yeah.
But my focus for what we're doing predominantly are the metals and paper. So that's as we will. You want to talk about the docu-series we're doing, but that's kind of where we're more, because it gets back, Andy. That's what we do most of. And yet it's the one thing we do that nobody understands. Nobody knows
what happens.
Nobody knows where the bridge comes from. Nobody knows where your highway, all that. Nobody knows this. Nobody knows that the airports that are being built and Vegas, Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas, built from recycled iron. Ice breaking, the steel mill at SSAB, they have developed a new high quality steel for icebreakers. And people go, what are icebreakers? Icebreakers keep trade routes open, the St. Lawrence River in the dead of winter and different parts of in the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere on their winters to keep trade routes open. And so people just take new steel for granted. And I think that it's time they understand what takes place to make new steel. And it takes a strong recycled materials industry.
So the docu-series, it's a series. So how many parts is it?
Well, we don't know 100% yet what it is. We know there will be several parts.
Okay.
We will definitely focus on steel making. We'll focus on metal recycling facilities that process the recycled iron to get it ready for the steel mill. We're at a paper mill that takes recycled paper. Also, we're talking to them about their forestry service because, most paper mills own their own forest.
Yep.
And we have to understand that most people think if you cut down 40 acres of a forest, deforestation. And nobody cries when we cut wheat or we cut corn out of the field or soy or cotton or lettuce or melons. Look, I'm in an ag-heavy area here in Bakersfield, but, nobody's crying, right? Well, quit your belly aching over somebody who owns land, grows their own trees, and just because they don't harvest it every year, they harvest it every 40 years.
Yeah.
Quit belly aching, people, because that wood, that lumber that is those trees are providing, go to a lumber mill. The residual after they shave the logs and make the lumber, all that is what they make in this one mill up in Spokane. That's what they make new paper from. And we're going to celebrate that. And we're also going to talk about, out here in California, we've had some major, major forest fires.
Yep.
And people wonder, well, why? Well, because there's this mindset, and this is what you'll learn by watching this docuseries. There's this mindset by states that have state forests or the national forest, hands off. It's a national forest. You can't do anything good. Hands off. Well, they let the forest overgrow, so there's no sunlight that, the canopies cover are so covered, there's no sunlight that gets to the floor of the forest. And because of that, everything dies. And you don't have any new species growing. And when there's a fire, all that stuff that's dead because there's no sunlight to that gets to spur new growth, it's fuel. And so when these forest fires rage out of control, it's because they don't manage a forest. And so this paper mill, Inland Empire Paper, they have 120,000 acres of their own forest land. And when we get to talking and how they manage it, what they do for the soil, what they do to develop under represented species of different types of woods. Look, there's so many different white pine, cedar, et cetera, et cetera. They know how to manage a forest. And when a forest fire comes to their land, it won't decimate their forest because of how they've managed it. So this is part of the docu-series as well. So we're not sure exactly how many parts to it, but there's going to be several parts to it. We're discussing with a lot of major players right now, be it Apple TV, be it Netflix, Amazon. We know for sure it's going to be on YouTube. Okay, it'll be on the Sierra YouTube channel for sure.
So, and you guys, this is self-funded? You just said, "Hey, I want to do a docu-series."
Self-funded, and it's not cheap.
So I had a videography company for about 3 years. I just got done doing a documentary for the VA here in Milwaukee, and it was 15 months to shoot a 20-minute documentary from concept to final edit. And so I can only imagine with the docuseries and the traveling and this, like, I get it. It's a lot of work, but I'm excited. I saw it with you, and not everyone shares my sentiment. Because it's one of those, like, I'm in this industry and I know, right, I know more than 99% of people out there about recycling, but the difference between me at 99% and the person at 99.1% is a drastic difference that I got to get really smart on, right? Because the people that are in this field, right, there's so much more I can learn in this field. So I'm looking forward to that because in my head, I'm like, okay, I'm a collector. I take it to a recycler takes it to a shredder takes it to a smelter takes it to a refiner or something, right? And then when we got a new bridge. It was like, okay, in my head that all makes sense, and maybe I'm missing a couple steps in there. But then then what? Like, I want to see what that looks like, and
we're going to show what that looks like. We
exactly
metal.
That's interesting,
and the processing, but we get to show steel making and how it's done with the electric arc furnace here in the United States, because that's predominantly most of the steel mills in the United States are electric arc furnaces, and it's crazy. I mean, to truly be inside of the steel mill, to film where we got to film, man, it one of the highlights of my life, not because I hadn't seen one, but to get to film in places you don't get to film at because of what we're doing with this docu-series. And hats off to SSAB. Let me tell you, this outfit understands. They're out of they're a European outfit, actually out of Sweden. And they get it. They understand that the messaging about new steel making and how they do it, they make new steel in Muscatine, Iowa without any fossil fuels for energy. It's all wind-driven energy. So they make older new steel without any fossil fuels in the process. How great is that?
That is what I get behind. I wrote a paper years ago on sustainable solutions, and it was just this thing I said, and then I realized, no, sustainable solutions matter. And for our listeners out there, right, sustainable solutions are very simple. It's 3 pillars of sustainability, right? It has to be first and foremost socially desirable. It has to be environmentally sound, and then the third thing, and this is where a lot of people that are yelling, screaming, complaining, holding a sign on the street corner, they don't understand, right? It has to be economically feasible. And to hear that there is a steel mill out there that's taking old steel and turning into new steel without using fossil fuels, like, they've cracked the nut.
You're going to start seeing this transpire and to a greater degree across this land. But you got to be able to be in an area that you can create energy from a alternative source. Okay, Not everybody can have wind energy. Okay, they have the ability. So, look, let's not beat up fossil fuels. Okay.
No.
I beg anybody to tell me how they are going to eat without fossil fuels. Please
no,
tell me how you harvest without a little bit of oil.
You can't. And even these okay, let's get your take on. I'd love to hear your take on EVs, because one of the challenges with EVs right now is, what do you do with the batteries, right? I watched a documentary over the weekend on it, right? And they haven't figured it out, because there's a lot of pieces in there that aren't recyclable, right? They can't pull the lithium, they can't pull the cobalt.
Batteries out there, the early EVs, the batteries that they use versus the hybrid battery versus the Tesla battery versus all these, it is somewhat of an issue. Being a metal recycler that I am, and knowing a lot of the large metal shredding operations in America, and we had this was a topic of discussion at the ISRI board meeting this last week. There's a bit of a challenge here, because nobody really knows. Because, see, the thing is that the people who make the batteries, and you got the automakers, haven't really been communicating downstream with the people who take the end-of-life vehicles and recycle it, how to properly handle all these batteries. And the more EVs that are getting out there, they've been out there for a while now. So what's happening is now you're starting to see them end up in the wrecking yards. You're starting to see them ending up at the shredding facilities that will shred the automobile to make a raw material to fill the supply chain for the steel mills. So, but how do they do it with those batteries in the vehicle? And that's a challenge. Don't have the answer right now, Andy. I'm not an auto shredder, but it is a challenge, and you are 100% right when you say that. They'll find the solution, because there will be too many of them, and you can't just throw that stuff in a landfill and side of the road.
Well, and this is my point about that recycler you talked about that can use wind energy. This is the point that you're making about the paper company that has 120,000 acres. Ultimately, when you find solutions that are economically feasible, along with socially desirable and are environmentally sound, in a capitalistic society like ours, small business will figure it out. Because we will be innovative. We will figure it out when there's money to be made. Right. That's what it comes down to, and that's my challenge to our listeners, and I'll challenge you just as much as you're challenging me. Sure. What can we do on a day in and day out basis to make it happen? Because we sit back and wait for handouts or regulation. We sit back and wait for the big companies to figure it out. It's not going to happen. We have to be willing to innovate at our level. We see the problem. We got to figure out what the solution is. Real quick, you use the term ISRI just for our listeners out there, the Institute of Scrap Recycling Industries, Inc., where I said at the top of the hour, you just won the West Coast Recycler of the Year.
No,
West Coast chapter
Advocate of the Year.
Recycling Advocate of the Year. I don't want to, right, when people collect W's left and right, I don't want to undermine the W's you're collecting out there in Laguna Beach.
It was a tremendous. I had no idea it was coming. Absolutely no idea. Didn't even know they even created the award. But it's very humbling to have been chosen. I am an advocate for this industry. I am a recycler. I'm a manufacturer of recycling equipment, but I'm also an advocate. And just because I just see the lack, there's a real lack of common sense about a lot of people who make a lot of rules and regulation. And it all goes back to why I'm trying to get away from that blue bin, get away from the 4%. I want to talk about the 96% and the amazing job that this 96% does for our day-to-day lives, because I would challenge anybody as they walk around, they get on the road and they drive, and they see a stop sign or stop light made from steel. There's your stoplight. Oh, there's electric in there. That means there's recycled copper content. Or all the street signs that are made with aluminum, from recycled aluminum, or all the parts from that you get put into your body from, a screw if you fracture an ankle and they put a screw in you. Well, that's recycled metals, the replacements, and on and on and on, because people, when they start looking and touching and seeing, well, if it's made from metal, most likely it came from recycled metals. And that's all. Look at your appliances at home. How about your refrigerator, your stove?
All of it.
It's all recycled metal.
And this is the challenge I have. I want more and more people in our industry. We're the small haulers, right? I'm doing a podcast now with Waste 360. I'm their small hauler advocate. That's what they call me, which is fine. God bless. But for all the small haulers to understand that we got to be part of that 96%. We got to be the ones. We're not talking about the bottle here, the bottle there in the blue bin. We're talking about when you're pulling full loads of cubicles, appliances, you name it, take the time to take things apart to maximize the recyclable value. Don't put things in the landfill, because what you guys have in California and other states is awesome. I have seen here in the Midwest and down south, where land is not at a premium, where we have space and not a lot of regulations. It's like, let me just take my load wherever I can, dump things as fast as I can, and get on down the road. And we're throwing away mattresses that have recyclable components. We're throwing away appliances. We're throwing away sinks and faucets and you name it, because it's easier and the regulation isn't forcing us to do it. And that bothers me. So I want to challenge everybody out there to look at how you can do it. There is a economically viable solution. Yes, when oil prices are up, scrap is down. That's a fact. That's the reality we're at. We were at $300 a ton in April, which was an inflated price, mind you, right, for scrap steel. Now we're at $100 a ton, still lower than I'd like to see. I'd like to see around $180 to $220 a ton. But just because the price is down doesn't mean we have to stop doing it. And that's the challenge. That's the challenge. I don't have to preach to you because we're on the same team here. But the challenge is to everyone listening, right? I'm an advocate on the front line. You're taking things next level and showing all the things in the world that we interact with. And the world is created and made by reusing, recycling, repurposing the things we interact with every day. And that's the opportunity. That's a charge that very few people won't get behind. And my challenge is not just do it, but then advocate for it, right? If it changes some hearts and minds, awesome. But moreover, I want people thinking twice before they put stuff curbside, before they put stuff in a 30 or 40-yard dumpster, because it's simple.
I want people to be thinking not only what you just said, because you're spot on, but I want people to understand CO2 emissions don't have a border. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Why would I say that? Because stop beating up American industry that is the most environmentally sound of all countries, our steel making.
Yep.
It's the best. It's the safest, because we put a premium on safety. That's going to also be part of this steel. So
as it should.
People say we don't want steel mills here in America.
Well,
okay,
yeah.
so hold on.
Let's look at the alternative. Yeah.
They're going to go to the integrated mills in India and China, okay? Do you think they have the same? Do you know that people are going to die every year in steel mills in those countries because of the lack of the safety that they have? And how much more CO2 emissions are going to be, put in the atmosphere? There's no border. So don't give me your bullshit that this needs not to be in this country. It needs to stay in this country, because the environmental stewardship shown by the paper mills of America and the steel mills of America are where the true leadership comes for saving the environment and sending mom and dad home every day to their family with everything they came to work with, because safety is important. But we don't look at it that way. Oh, let's shift that overseas. You're not going to tell me overseas in China
watch.
They're going to have the same safety.
Oh yeah, there's the documentary on Netflix. Actually won a bunch of awards, probably 3-4 years ago. It was talking about glass manufacturing. Then they moved into an old plant in Ohio when it was a Chinese company, and they worked Americans like they worked the Chinese, and the safety standards were laxed, and the productivity was to the max, and the efficiency wasn't there. But they didn't care, because their mindset is we'll work 14 hours a day, and safety is not a priority. And the Americans just blew their mind. But in China, that's how it's done. We don't have to get super geopolitical. If you look at the way that India and China they have the capability of infrastructure. They choose not to because they go with cheap and effective methods. They've destroyed their waters and river systems. They've destroyed the ground they stand on. And then to your point, you're right. It's not like, hey, out of sight, out of mind. That's the same people that are like, I have an electric vehicle. And say, well, where do you think that power comes from? They're burning coal down the street. So you're right. You're not pumping the gas, but they're burning coal down the street, right? Like, you're not saving the damn world here. Or in California, you guys have those beautiful generators where it takes eight diesel gallons for 20 miles of driving, right? My numbers are off, but not that far.
I've tried to figure that. I'm not smart enough to figure that out. But no. I know this: CO2 emissions have no borders.
Yep.
The environmental stewardship in this country for steel making and paper making and aluminum and copper making, if you will, from recycled metals, recycled paper, is better than any place in the world.
It's true.
Our safety protocols are better than any other place in the world. So if you put value on our human lives and you put value on the environment, you would welcome this industry in America and not thwart it away.
Correct. The problem is they want this perfect utopian society where no one gets hurt. It's not ugly. And the iPhones just appear in your hand, right? They don't want to put the work in. They don't want to understand that, yeah, there are some industries where, yes, we're making improvements. And yes, there's going to be concerns, but let's have them here on this shore where we can regulate it. Because, yes, taking it overseas you're just moving the pollution somewhere else.
So people love mass transit. Would we agree that in New York City and Chicago, mass transit, what does it do? It saves the environment, right? Okay, hold on. Here's my point. Our industry is a little gritty. Mm-hmm. Kind of, you can get dirt underneath your fingernails if you work in a metal recycling facility or a paper recycling facility. But let's go to mass transit. Do you think that mechanic who works on the subway cars or the buses isn't getting dirty?
Mm-hmm.
You don't think there's oil in buses? Transmission oil, engine oil, even if they're made with gas, LNG,
LNG now, yeah.
LNG, you don't think there's oil in the motors and the transmissions? Point is you can't be green without a little grit. It takes grit to be green. And let's not lose sight that some people have to get a little dirty to keep the environment clean for the masses.
Right there, you just said, Taylor, before I forget, what you just said. You got to have grit to get green?
Yeah.
Or in order to get green, you need grit?
Yeah. I've said it many different ways.
All right, well, one of those two, there you go, can't be green without grit. There's the episode title. And it takes a certain amount of time to get to the episode, but that's true, right? But this is it. This is the truth, right? We are out there hauling, whether it's curbside, alleyways, or in people's basements, garage, attics, right? We're out there haulers. I'm going to call us the small haulers that go into people's houses and haul things out. Right. It takes a little bit of grit. It might take a little bit of extra muscle, right? For the guys out there that have dump trailers and dump trucks, you're right. It is simpler to go to the landfill, dump it out the ass end, pull forward, close the barn doors, and fucking go about your business and not give two shits about where that washer or dryer go. It takes a little bit of grit to put it to the side. It takes a little grit to put it reload it in your truck and drive it across the street or across town to put it. But you know what? That's the grit that we have. If you wanted to have a desk jockey job, right? You wouldn't have beat up hands and oil beneath your fingernails. You're already here. Might as well do it right. Might as well show others that you know what you're doing.
Who has a white collar job, office job that uses any form of transportation.
Yeah.
There's a guy getting gritty to keep that transportation moving. The airline industry.
Yes.
You don't think there's somebody in the hydraulics and the airplanes and getting oily at the end of the day, or your buses or your car? Listen, there's no such thing as this society that doesn't have a little bit of oil, a little bit of grease. The recycling industry, yes, there's a little bit of that. But the way the environmental stewardship of this country with what we've put together and with the environmental regulations, which are, strong, good. Let's have more industry here because this is where it's going to be done properly, not shipped overseas where it's going to be done at the cost of Mother Nature, at the cost of human lives. Right, Andy? Would you agree with that?
100%. You are evangelical in the world of recycling, right? Right? We got to kind of call Joel Olsterman. We got to get on a Sunday morning and preach. But that's true, right? And there's this divide between white collar, blue collar, and I don't give a shit. Be a professional at what you do. Take pride in your craft, and that's what it comes down to, right? Your world is recycling, right? You guys take pride in that because you know how to do it, and I would argue you can do it better than lobbyists and politicians and college students with great ideas all day. Right, way better, right?
And now they come in and try to run one of our businesses.
Oh my God, be a joke!
With the rules and regulations they've placed on it, good luck.
Yeah, and you guys have adapted and evolved. You figured it out all these years.
This is there. You can't have profits or clean. We have to have profits and environment. So we don't get to use the word or. We have to use the word and. And our industry does it. The for-profit recycled materials industry is doing it on a daily basis, hourly basis, around the clock, 365.
There's nothing academic about what we're doing, right? We get out there and we get after it. We figure it out. We don't theorize. We don't write it down. It doesn't look great on paper all the time, but we figure out and day in and day out. Because the thing is, if we don't figure it out, somebody else within our industry will. And they'll put us on a business. And I love that. I love it when I see other companies, they're doing things better than me or different than me, because that means there's innovation happening. And I can always steal what they're doing, right? Right. I heard from one of my mentors years ago, right? Plagiarism is when you take all your ideas from one person. Research is when you get all your ideas from all the people, right? And I want to be in that mindset where I want to research, right, all the things that all the best people are doing to come up with the best plan. And that's why we do this. And having guests like you on the podcast is extremely important to me, because this isn't just now me beating my drum, but this is truly you're more in depth than I am. You have many more years of knowledge, right? In '84, when you were starting, I was born, right? So you got however many more years that is on me. I'm not going to call you old, right? That's subjective. Old is subjective. I'm saying you got 38 years in the industry. Well, I got 38 years, right, and I got 38 years on the planet. So it's just a different mindset. And I came from a blue-collar father that only knew how to drive in the nice neighborhoods and jump in dumpsters, right? And we knew we took it to the recycling facility and then went somewhere else. And I've taken his torch and I've run with it. And I would love it someday. I got an 8-year-old daughter, if she would take my torch and run with it, right? But I also don't have to beat down walls.
It's for them to be happy. That's the only thing.
Oh, exactly. Oh, yeah, I would like. Yeah, my daughter she's 8. She loves coming to the warehouse now. Of course, I think most people, secretly you want your kids to be in the same industry, but at the end of the day, if she's happy, that's more important than taking over daddy's business, right? I can sell it and produce documentaries someday.
If you look at this, I use Apple Computer, and this keyboard is made from aluminum.
Aluminum, oh yeah, aluminum keyboard.
How about recycled aluminum? All right, so anyway, hey Andy, this has been awesome.
It's been fun.
Conversation. Really, you know what? I can see you got the passion too, and I love it that you're helping spreading the word, because I think in the end, there's a lot of people. We have a very misunderstood industry, and we are not a waste industry. I mean, now you might handle waste in what you do, but the recycled materials industry, there's no waste here. We are creating a raw material to fill the supply chains for new manufacturing. We are kind of the first step in a lot of new manufacturing in this country for new steel, new aluminum, new copper, new paper, and new stainless. We're the first step in that.
No, absolutely. You're absolutely right. We are intercepting material that would otherwise enter the supply. It would enter the waste stream. We're intercepting it, right? So that's it. So I do appreciate your time. I respect your time. It's been a great time here. Lots of learning going on. All right, so if you want to learn more about John, real simple. The documentary is coming out called Repurposed. Not sure yet, but keep an eye on it. He's already got some teasers
coming out either at the end of the year or first part of January, at the absolute latest first part of January. We'll be announcing, if you follow Sierra on any social media, we'll be making a big splash. It'll definitely be on YouTube at a minimum, but we think we're going to have some great platforms, great channels, Andy, to put it on. And I know you're going to help spread the word, because I'm going to tell you, this is shot in 4K, and it is badass.
I've already watched the trailer like 4 times because I saw it. I showed it to our producer. I showed it to my co-host. I showed it to my girlfriend. She was like halfway through, and she's like, "What? What are we doing?" I was like, "Whatever." I was like, "I'll watch it again. I don't care." All right. You could also find, John, it's like what, weekly, bi-weekly, whatever, your Pilot Scrap
my podcast is sometimes I'll do a whole bunch in a row. And I'm doing one. I'm going to do one tomorrow, a solo podcast. I usually have guests on my podcast. I'm going to do a solo podcast. It'll be probably out next week. Pilot Scrap. It's on Spotify and Apple. So we have 70 or 60 something episodes. Might be closing in on 70 that are out there. So,
and what do you primarily cover in that podcast? I always want to promote others.
I primarily discuss the recycling industry. Although I've had some interesting. I have economist Jason Schenker who will come on. He's on a couple times a year. He's an incredible economist. I just had a lady, Lizette Patterson, fantastic staffing agency, talking about the challenges and the labor market from blue collar, white collar. Entrepreneurs like George Adams have been on, individual company people with family businesses. So it's a vast, but it always has something to do, circling back, always has something to do with the recycling industry.
Excellent. Well, no, I really do appreciate that. A lot of things, takeaways I've had from today is that, right, we got to be an evangelical about what we're doing, not just here in this industry, but why we're on this planet. Because what we do ultimately here as entrepreneurs in the recycling space is build the dreams, build the lives that we want by maximizing all the things we interact with, right? There's that old adage, right? One man's trash, another man's treasure. The opportunity is to see the world with a new eye. So next time you see a stoplight, stop sign, a keyboard, whatever it is, remember that came from somebody else doing the right thing by not putting things in the landfill, but choosing to recycle and maximize the value of all the things they have. John, it's been an absolute pleasure. Pilot Scrap episodes, you can check them out, all the places you talked about. Repurposed documentary coming out at the end of the year or first thing next year. Cannot thank you enough for being a guest here. This has been episode 34 of the Trash Talk Business Podcast. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.